going all the way back to Investors Day 2020, where Kathy Kennedy is live on stage for 15 minutes. It's the biggest L Lucasfilm has ever taken. To go back and watch her now talk about this canceled project and this canceled project, and Taika Waititi's hard at work writing his script. What? That still might not happen. Like, so it's such a debacle. Nick
and that was 3 years ago.
Yeah, that was 3 years ago. And like, it is a massive failure. They have got to stop promising all these things, and they actually have to over deliver what they give us. They have to give us some great things. I don't know. The thing is, with Iger coming in and Disney with their agenda and their lean, until they prove otherwise, they're not smart enough, or they don't like money enough, I don't guess, to come out with something that a lot of the fans are going to get behind. If they come out and say, we're putting Rey and Grogu in a movie together and it's going to be magic, the internet will be ablaze, and it will be and I'm not going to sit here and say that the majority of the fans are going to hate that, or I'm not going to like it. That's me. There's definitely going to be a group that's gonna like something like that. I don't think that that just doesn't really interest me. I don't know, Valiant. What's going to happen? Who knows? And that's why I think the interest is up.
Okay, well, since Nick can't hear me, probably
basically
Picard-based network.
Yeah,
I think Nick's been on a delay for a while.
I have no idea. He just said,
yeah.
can't
So
seem to hear
I was
me.
just saying, I think the Grogu interest is going down. I see more and more comments, not just on our channel or in our streams, but in other people's channels and streams, where they're like, all right, we get it. The shtick is over. It's being overplayed now at this point. And people just feel that he should have stayed with Luke. That whole ending of Mando season 2, chapter 16, just was like all for nothing, and a lot of people didn't watch Book of Boba Fett, so they come into Mando season 3 and they're like, hey, what's going on? How are they back together here? So the decision making on their end, as far as from a storytelling perspective, just is atrocious.
Mm-hmm.
It just seems to get worse and worse. When we had a lot of hope in it moving forward, and I'm still curious to see what's going to happen with the rest of season 3. Maybe it'll turn itself around in these last couple episodes. But
wow, Nick, the positive force.
But I'm not holding my breath. That's going to happen. I mean, if the first half of this season is any indication of what the second half will be, we'll probably get more of the same of, the episode of the week, monster of the week, side quest of the week.
I remember when Valiant called it on Hogwarts Legacy. I'm having more fun with those side quests.
I remember when Valiant called the Mandalorian specifically the Golden Goose, and really because of Grogu. Yeah. Now it's just a goose.
You're right.
Yeah.
You're right. And I've been, for those of you out there watching and chatting, we've got a poll out there. Do you want to see, or would you watch a Star Wars movie in theaters that would feature Rey and Grogu together? Yes or no? Simple question. But I've been watching all of the new season of The Mandalorian on EBN's Patreon. So, I'd rather give you all the $5 a month to watch than Disney Plus, and I've been happily doing it. So y'all make sure not only check out Echo Based Network, but check out EBN's Patreon.
Our Patreon's fire. Just gonna say,
yeah, it is.
Yeah, we got all kinds of stuff on.
We're already trying to work on the coupling name of Grogu and Rey. It is either going to be Go Rey or Rey Goo. We're leaning more towards Rey Goo because of
I had that for lunch.
Exactly. And speaking of Rey,
imagine the marketing tie-ins. My God.
Speaking
God.
I was going to say, and this is where I think you guys are right on this whole thing. They're getting behind Rey. I saw this at the store yesterday.
Oh, wow. Hell. Really?
Oh, that's
Yes.
horrible.
So
Thank
to
you,
me,
Tom,
I'm like,
for-
these aren't
I used to
going
like
anywhere.
SpaghettiOs.
These characters are not going anywhere. This is brand effing new. Like, I just saw this at the store, right? So this is not from like 3 years ago or anything like that. I think you're right. I think they have gotten to this point where they're like, look, we fucked it up, but what have we got? We've got Rey, we've got BB-8. We need to move forward with these characters. Grogu is a huge deal.
Yeah.
Let's make Rey Goo. And
Did you actually check the expiration just to be sure?
yes, I was like, this cannot be new.
Lorn, it's SpaghettiOs, brother. They don't expire for like
They
50
don't, for
years.
like
It
50
doesn't
years,
matter.
But,
Yeah.
Yeah.
but no, he is right. Like, these are brand new cans. These aren't like from like a few years ago. Yeah. So
Yeah. Yeah.
So
and
I think honestly, if they want to try and revive Star Wars at all right now, I think the first thing that they should do is if they're going to announce a movie, just announce one. The second thing they need to do is they need to transport to some different era. I don't want them anywhere near the Old Republic right now because I just
Oh yeah.
they've already screwed up everything else. I don't want them to screw that up. But the problem they have right now is they've got this.
talk
this
a little bit about more about that, Lauren, with the Old Republic, and because I mean, look, we're going to the High Republic era with this Acolyte show that Iger has announced. Hey, I've seen it. This looks brilliant. His words. It's coming to Disney Plus in 2024. I mean, they've been filming this thing at Shinfield Studios now for the last 4 or 5 months. Leslie Headland is the showrunner for this sucker. Yay! Where are we going with this? I mean, talk about the Old Republic stuff.
Well, the one thing that I'll give them credit for with the High Republic is at least they were trying to deliberately separate it a little bit from the Old Republic. That time period's about 300 years to 80 years prior to the Phantom Menace. The Old Republic, what you're usually talking about it, is about 4,000 years prior to A New Hope. But if you really want to get serious, you could go to the dawn of the Jedi era, which is 30,000 years before. What they need, though, is an era of time that they can't pollute. The problem that they have right now is that we know where everything goes to the sequel trilogy. So if they continue to insist on linking it up, there's no narrative tension. If you try and go after that, you still, unless you go way after that, you still have to address, all right, what happened with Rey and the name Skywalker? Did she start a new Jedi Order? What the heck is going on there? You don't want that either. Don't screw up the Old Republic era. So I think what they have to do is kind of what some of the rumors have been. If you're trying to improve this, go to a different era, go to a different area of the galaxy so that it's new creatures, new cultures, new Force traditions, but still with kind of a artistic tie to what's gone before, so it looks like Star Wars. And if it takes off and it's great, great. If it's a stinker, you can ignore it because it doesn't touch anything else. Right now, their top priority should be stop poisoning everything else. Stop trying to build these narrative ties. Wait out the current leadership until you can get a visionary in there who can prove their stuff and then move forward with that.
Let me ask you something, Lorn, and to Nick and to Coach. Tom, too, feel free to jump in. We'll go around the table because you mentioned something that has been nagging at me for some time. And again, just syntax and language to me means everything when I hear, especially in interviews. Coach, you and Nick, or Coach and Nick, y'all have talked about this a number of times. Lorn, you've talked about this on TPP. The interviews, right? We keep getting these interviews with Jon Favreau and with Dave Filoni talking about what they're working on. And of course, most of these interviews, like the most recent ones, they bring up this is the space that we have to work in between this and this. What constantly bugs me is that, especially with Favreau's comments, he always seems to leave himself a bit of a caveat, a bit of an out in the language. It's subtle, but it's there. Now, I want to preface what I'm about to say very clearly. I don't have any information, and I don't think at this point that there's anything concrete that points to they're going to deviate from the sequel trilogy timeline or that they're going to create an alternate universe, at least not now. And the reason I bring that up is because I find it fascinating to me that over the course of the last couple of years, with each of these interviews that has happened with Favreau in particular, and Filoni in some cases too, they have mentioned, this is the time that we have to work in. We're working between this up until the time of the sequel trilogy, the time of The Force Awakens, the time. So when you see what I'm saying?
There was another writer too who was asked about this, and they flat out said they could not deviate.
Right, and that may be the case as of right now, but I find it interesting that instead of saying, like, if Favreau could say that we have to work within this era or we have to work within here because we're going to this, he's never specifically said that we have to work within this before we get to The Force Awakens. He always keeps bringing up the time. I've just always found that's been a nagging thing at the back of my mind. And my point is with this, and I'm going to turn it over to you guys because I want to hear what you have to say. I think in the back of Favreau's mind, I think he would like to do something different. I mean, he's made it kind of clear in the past he was not a fan of the sequel trilogies, like most of us. I kind of wonder, he probably has. I think Favreau really did come up with something completely different because he's a creative. That's just how that man's brain works. Now, the question becomes, will the Walt Disney Company ever actually give him leave to do something like that? That's the big question, right? It's not does he want to, it's will he have permission to do so? I just keep finding it interesting that he talks about the time they're working in, like he doesn't want to put himself in too much of a corner. It's like this shows that we can work in this 20-year period. I don't know. It's just weird to me. So I don't know. What do y'all think?
I'll jump in here real quick because, like I said, I can't remember the writer who it was, but it was somebody from within the Lucasfilm writing group who flat out said they cannot deviate from the path that's set before them. Because I can't remember the exact quote, so I'm paraphrasing here, but the way I took it was that basically, like, George Lucas might have signed off this whole deal. Like, the way it was is like they signed a deal saying they couldn't change anything from the previous films, right? Mm-hmm. That came before episode 1 through 6. And I think part of that was because George wanted to make sure nobody tinkered with his movies, right? Mm-hmm. Like nobody but him. And in that, I think he kind of signed away the fact that anything that is put on film is canon from here on out. Because that's kind of the way this person was explaining it. Was like anything that's ever been on film is canon, period. Hands down, end of discussion. It will never change. And anytime anybody's gotten close to talking about this, either remaking the original movies or, undoing the sequel trilogy somehow, you're right. Favreau won't like flat out answer it, but he'll sidestep it into something like basically like, yeah, we can work within a parameter. I can do whatever the hell I want within these parameters, basically.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it's gotten to a point where, from what I've seen from the shows and everything that's going on behind the scenes, I think Favreau has kind of given up. I honestly wouldn't be surprised if he doesn't. He claims he'll be around for as long as they'll keep him, but I wouldn't be surprised if he doesn't move on here pretty soon. I don't think we're going to get much more than season 3 and 4 of The Mandalorian after this out of him.
And you might be
right. He
right.
does have these big plans, but I see a lot of it falling apart now as we're speaking. So
yeah, and they don't necessarily have to, quote, decanonize the sequel trilogy, right? They could just go into a skewed timeline. They could go somewhere else. There's things they could do with enough space. I don't know. But Coach, go ahead.
So 10 days ago on the official Star Wars YouTube channel, they had Dave Filoni and Jon Favreau sit down for an interview. It's called Jon Favreau and Dave Filoni Talk Mandalore, Jackson Returns, and More. You guys can go check it out. It's their second to last video.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I haven't seen this one.
In that video, Jon Favreau says he's talking about the Mandalorian and he's talking about the New Republic era. And he said, "We know what happened before." And they showed clips of the original trilogy, and we know what happened after. And when he said that, the official Star Wars channel is showing an image of Rey, and then they showed an image of First Order stormtroopers.
Mm-hmm.
He let us know. He has point blank let us know, look, we're telling you a story that's in between these two things. That's what I'm doing. To me, as far as where Jon Favreau stands, there's no hope in a retcon. And you also have to take into account, and I like Favreau. I like Favreau a lot. He's given us a lot of really good Star Wars.
Yeah, I love the guy.
Dave Filoni is his boss now. And in Mandalorian Season 1, he wasn't. But in the middle of 2020, Disney slid him in to executive creative director.
Yes.
So when they're whiteboarding Dave Filoni's Sharpie or
dry erase marker.
Thank you, dry erase marker. It's a little brighter than John's. It means a little more than John's. And lo and behold, here we are in Mandalorian Season 3. We're getting Jon Favreau or Dave Filoni Star Wars.
Well, that makes a lot more sense now that I did not know this. This
Yeah,
is complete and utter news to me.
Yeah, and Coach, y'all did cover this quite well on Echo Based Network, and your videos lately have been going bonkers, which is great. I love to see it.
Thank you, sir. It's all Nick. It's not me.
Yeah, whatever.
But, you know, to that end, I think you're 100% right. And I just wanted to take the opportunity, and then Tom, I want you to jump in, to remind folks out there watching that may not be aware or may have forgotten the business relationship variances between Filoni and Favreau. A lot of people think of them as being like co-equals at Lucasfilm. Nothing could be further from the truth. What Coach just said is 100% accurate. We covered it. You covered it on Echo Base. I covered it on Valiant Renegade, like when I was in my first few months on YouTube when that happened. Right? Dave Filoni got named as an executive creative director at Lucasfilm. There are several executive creative directors at Lucasfilm, but Dave Filoni has the distinction of being creative director over the storytelling from that standpoint of Star Wars. Like Doug Chiang is an executive creative director at Star Wars, but Doug Chiang is the brilliant mind behind the art of Star Wars. So like I keep reminding folks, like it's like, oh my God, visually the stuff in Andor, visually the stuff in Mando, the worlds, the ships and everything. Oh my God, it looks so great. I just wish the stories were better. All that stuff that you love, that's Doug. That's Doug. He's been with George and Lucasfilm. Yeah, art and he's been with him. He's been with Lucasfilm for 2+ decades, I think, at this point. So there's a difference. Jon Favreau is not, repeat, not. Jon Favreau is not an employee of Lucasfilm. Jon Favreau is Jon Favreau. Jon Favreau is Gollum Creations LLC, right? He is a hired gun showrunner to come in and do this. So, like we've talked about before, like Tom, you guys on Midnight Judge have talked about before, Disney has this problem where they bring in these brilliant creative minds and then they kind of hand them a paint-by-numbers, instruction book. This is what we want you to do. We already have it. This you have to build. We don't need you to create anything. Just do this. So that's kind of the role that Favreau has always been in. Now he's had more leave, but I think now I think you're right with Filoni in there in the catbird seat as creative director. He's kind of handing some instructions now to Favreau to just, this is what I want you to build for me. I think you're right. And I think that's why season 3 of The Mandalorian looks and feels strikingly different than what has come before it. It's like more of the same, or it's a little bit more commercialized, and the interest has been, look, and this is just measurable mathematical metrics, folks. The season opener for The Mandalorian, regardless of whether or not Samba TV is an accurate projector of total households watched, they are a very, very good system to monitor when it comes to comparing one show to another that has been measured by Samba. And when we see a 50% plus audience reduction from the end of season 2 on Mando to where season 3 started, and Disney Plus has added 10, 15 plus million domestic subscribers since that point, there's no way that should happen. No way that should happen. So